Okay, so to make this little Pikachu, we're going to need obviously a big ball of yellow fondant. I've already coloured that, you can buy it, and I've already added some gum Tragasanth, which is what I've got here, just to make it dry harder and to stand up better as a model. We're going to need some black fondant, a little bit of red for his cheeks, and a tiny little bit of white for his eyes. I'm just going to move those out of the way, and also we're going to use some cocktail sticks as the sort of skeleton, if you like. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to split this yellow fondant roughly in half, put half away over there, and first off we're going to make the body. Now this is going to be a really simple shape. It's going to be a very squat pear shape because Pikachu is sort of short and round. So I've just rolled it between the palms of my hands so that it's nice and crease free, and what I'm going to do is, using my palms, I'm going to apply more pressure at the top while I roll it between my palms than at the bottom, just to make a pear shape. So I hope you can see that. Just roll it between my palms like that, place the bottom. Now we want to make it a little bit taller than he actually will be, because when his head goes on he will squash down a little bit. So there you can see a nice sort of pear shape. So we'll place him up there. Now we're going to need the majority of this piece here for his head, so I'm just going to take off maybe a quarter of it, put that to one side to make his legs and his ears. Looking at that might be a bit big, so I'm just going to take another lot off. He does have quite a big head, but it's not so big that it's going to overbalance. So once again, just rolling it between my hands to make it nice and crease free. What I'm going to do now is I might take 2 cocktail sticks, because he is going to have quite a big head, and I'm going to stick those down into his body, turning them so they don't squash the body. Stick them all the way down until they won't go any further, because he's quite tall. And there we are, he's ready now to take the head. So with this little ball of white, again, he hasn't got a perfectly round head. He's actually got sort of a head that's a little bit tapered at the top. So I've just used my fingers there just to shape the head a little bit. He's got quite a nice sort of big jaw, and then gets a little less wide at the top. So that's the general head shape. So it's really very simple. So into a ball, and then flatten the tops off a little bit. Now what we're going to do is take a small piece of the black fondant. I'll just move that over there. A really small piece of the black fondant, and just get all the creases out. And I'm going to take my sharp knife and just cut that ball in half. And what I'm going to do is, I've rolled that into 2 balls. They should be the same shape because you've just cut it in half, and flatten those onto the mat a little bit. And then I'm going to place those sort of maybe slightly more towards the top than the bottom of his head, quite far apart. And then I'm just going to take another tiny little bit of black fondant, sort of roll that into a little oval shape, if you can see that, and that goes between his eyes. Just sort of squash that down until it sticks. Now to place his little mouth onto his face, I'm going to use this this tool here, which you could use a toothpick, which would be absolutely fine, but I'm going to use this just because I find it a little bit easier, because it's curved, so you've got a little bit more control. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start in the middle and just draw a curved line, and then start the other side and draw the same curved line. And that's his little mouth. It's as simple as that. So next we need a small piece of the red fondant. And I'm going to place that on the mat because Pikachu has lovely rosy cheeks. Cut it in half. And as I did with the eyes, I'm just going to roll those two into equal size balls and then squash them onto the mat. And then we're going to place those onto his face. I always think that looks a bit strange, but actually when you see Pikachu all put together, it really does look like him. And there we go. Now I'm just going to take the tiniest piece, in fact that's too big, of white fondant, and once again roll it into a ball, cut it in half, and now these are going to be the little flecks of light in his eyes. So they're going to be slightly off center but in the same place on each eye. So I'll flatten those onto his eye rather than doing it on the board because they're so fiddly. And again, if you could see, just place it where you want it to be and squish it down. So there's Pikachu's head. So I would leave that a good couple of hours at least before you start putting it on the body, just to make sure that you're not squashing his head while you're trying to lift it up and put it on. So in the meantime, what we could do is make his little feet. So I've got probably a cherry tomato sized piece of yellow fondant here. Once again, as I always do, roll it to make sure it's crease free and then cut it in half so that you've got two equal pieces and roll them again. So what we need here is a kind of a quite long oval shape. So I'm just going to, slightly tapered as well, so thinner at the bottom than at the top. So I'm just going to roll that on my hand and then flatten it out. So if you imagine that's his heel and that's where his toes would be. And now what I'm going to do is take a cocktail stick and I'm just going to mark in sort of toe marks. So go all the way over the top and just sort of roll it down. And you see that leaves a nice sort of toe foot shaped mark. And what I'm going to do is, if you can see, I'm going to place that on his body, so as if he was sitting, and we'll make the other one and put it on in exactly the same way. So just move that onto there, roll it, flatten it out, and then put the little toe marks in as you did before, and place them sort of at a little jaunty angle. So there is Pikachu's body with his feet on, and once again just going to take two, I'm going to take again a cherry tomato sized piece and cut it in half, and this is going to be sort of his arms. So I think what we'll do is the opposite, so I'm going to roll it into a little tapered shape like that. So that's going to be, it's going to sit on his body like that. So that's the top of his arms and this is going to be his hands. So what I'll do is I'm just going to use my little finger and roll it around a little bit just to make a little sort of indentation almost for his wrist. And then again the same as we did for the feet. Just put a little indentation there, and that's just going to stick on his body, and we'll do the same with this one. So long thin shape, probably a bit too long, so just blunt that off a little bit, and then with the pinky finger just going to flatten the end off. And it needs to be this way because the wrist is the opposite way round, and then put the marks in, and then that's going to sit on that side. So there we have Pikachu's body with his little hands. Okay, so finally for Pikachu we just need to make some ears. So I'm going to use the whole of the fondant that's left, the green fondant. So I'm going to roll that up. This is still, it's really warm today, so I've got quite soft fondant. Hopefully it will dry nice and hard. So what we're going to have to do is stick these in with cocktail sticks because he's got quite upright ears. So rather than cutting out the shape of Pikachu's ears, I'm going to make them almost 3D and then flatten them. So for this, we're going to do the same sort of shape as we did for his arms. So an elongated tapering shape like that, and then I'm just going to flatten that off, make it flat at the bottom because that's going to sit against his head. Right, for his ears, I'm going to use most of the fondant that's left. I'm going to cut that in half so that we've got 2 equal pieces, and rather than his ears have got to be quite upright, so I'm going to make them in more of a 3D shape and then flatten them. So a similar shape to the shape that we used for his arms. So I'm just going to roll that out, tapered at one end, and flatten that. And then you need a flat bottom, so just give that a little bit of a tap because that's going to sit against his head. You might want to just sort of turn it out, and this is the time when you can do that, just sort of shape it. And we do need to stick a cocktail stick in readiness for it going in his head. Now it's not going to be that long, so we're going to have to cut a little bit of that off. I'll just do the other one so that we've got a reference for shape. So once again, roll it long, put it on the table and flatten it. Now that's obviously going to, let's flatten the bottom as well. That's obviously going to bend round that way. So another cocktail stick, I'll just pick that up. Another cocktail stick, twist it into the ear as far as you can go without it showing. Now Pikachu has little black bits on the tops of his ears, so I'm just going to I'll move those out of the way. I'm going to take a little piece of the black and with a rolling pin just roll that out. Now I want the black to go all the way around the ear rather than just be stuck on the front, so I've just cut a straight line there. Everything's so warm, picking everything up is a bit of a chore, so I shall just place this over the top of his ear in a kind of diagonal way, because that's how he's got, sort of almost as if the tip of his ear has been dipped into black dye. And just pick that up and wrap it around. Might have to do this when it's not quite so hot. What I'm going to do is roughly allowing a little bit of leeway for wrapping that round. I'm just going to cut off the excess, and then see, I've rolled this so thin, wrap it around, and then you can wrap the other side, try and get it in line. It's almost like wrapping a little present, but really gently. And then you just cut off the excess, and then you'll see how you can shape that around the top of his ear so it looks like his little ear has been dipped in a black colour. That's really, really, really important to leave those to dry because, as I say, it is really warm and everything's just going a bit floppy today. So we'll just do the same with the other ear. So to make Pikachu's tail, I've just rolled out another piece of yellow fondant, probably about 3-4 millimeters thick. I want to stick a cocktail stick in before we even cut it, so that we've got something to support, because the tail sticks out rather than sitting flat. We need to be able to cut it into a shape that's got as much support as possible. So I want it to be flat at the top, that much I know, but after that it's pretty much however you can get it to look nice and sort of thunderbolty. That might not be possible, so just it's going to have to be quite a thick thunderbolt, just so that it's got the support that it needs, because as you can imagine, and once that dries, that should be okay. But I mean, the cocktail stick runs right the way up there, so that should be okay. I'm going to leave that to dry. So once you've got all the pieces together and dried and ready to go on top of the cake, you can put the pieces together, stick the head on the body, place the ears in the top of the head as shown here, and then I think what I did here was I placed the tail on the cocktail stick into the cake rather than into the Pikachu, and it stands up quite nicely. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Please do take a look on my YouTube channel for all my other videos. Likes, subscribes would be really, really appreciated. Thank you very much for watching. Okay, bye-bye.